Hello, everyone, and welcome to ABA and MIA, where real talk meets real practice. I'm Corelix.
And I'm Miriam, and we're here to break down ABA, autism, and the everyday life of the 305.
With clarity, compassion, and a little Miami spice. So grab your cafecito and let's get into it. All right, everyone. So today we actually have a very special guest with us. His name is Adam Ventura. He needs no introduction to all behavior analysts in Miami. We are co-founders of the Miami Association for Behavior Analysis together. For some time, he had World Evolve. He's an entrepreneur. He's always involved in all kinds of very exciting topics. The main topic for today is artificial intelligence and how it impacts ABA. But first, I'd like for Adam, please introduce yourself to our guests so they can learn a little bit more about you.
Well, thank you so much, both of you, for the invite. I really enjoyed your intro. I thought that was very clever, and you all presented it so well. So I thought that was fantastic. But I'm a behavior analyst. I've been in behavior analysis for 22 years now, and I've worked in. Everybody has, I think, like a claim to fame in behavior analysis where they specialize in one thing or another. My claim to fame is everything. I've worked in every possible setting, but I did run an ABA therapy company for about 10 years, and then I sold it to private equity. I did teach at Florida International University for 12 years. And then recently, maybe about 4 years ago, I opened up another business called Intraverbal AI, where I'm exploring AI and behavior analysis. So I think that's my 30-second elevator speech about who I am.
I love that. Yes, you have been kind of a very comprehensive behavior analyst, so to speak. You're an entrepreneur at heart. You are great at business, and you've had a lot of success in everything you do. So I definitely applaud you for that. And it's so exciting to have you as a guest on our show. You are our very first guest on ABA and MIA.
Okay, all right.
Very cool. Excited.
Very cool. Thank you. Well, thank you. I'm honored. Thank you.
I'm actually interested in this topic because a lot of RBTs and BCBAs, you probably get this all the time, but is AI going to replace RBTs and BCBAs?
Absolutely not. And I actually think that, believe it or not, as we have the field structured right now, where most companies have a tiered service delivery model, where you have RBTs, in some cases a BCABA, and then a BCBA above it, RBTs are actually the safest. Okay. So anything that's a physical job is going to take a very long time to replace for a lot of different reasons. So my mother is a nurse. And if you ever get sick and you go to the hospital, you don't want a robot assuring you that you're going to feel better. Yeah. You want a human being coming over that can put their hand on your shoulder and tell you, hey, everything is going to be okay. I think that's number one. Number two, the people that are actually the implementers. And I know in other states like California, they call them something different. They're behavior consultants or behavior therapists or something like that, but it's kind of that frontline worker. Our field, ABA, you can't get much more human than what we do in ABA. So in ABA, the way that I see it, you need human beings to work with other human beings to help them be better human beings. And that's a huge part of what we do. We work on social skills all the time, communication skills, behavior reduction issues, but all of it involves learning the nuances of interacting with other people. And you just can't do that. There's too many different micro behaviors. There's facial expressions. There's mannerisms that you only pick up on when you're in person with someone. Just like doing this podcast is very different when we're doing it in person versus doing it online. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I feel like the biggest fear for parents they have is they don't want their kids to sound robotic.
Sure.
And so that's why they're kind of skeptical about ABA. Is my kid going to be robotic? So especially with AI and a robot interacting with that child, they're going to learn that way with the facial cues and sound robotic. And it's reinforcing for them because they get that social interaction. So they don't know how to like actually have a typical conversation with like a human. So it's definitely so important to have human interaction.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's not just about the vocal communication, but it's the physically interacting with your environment, being able. So my son, we were just talking about kids before we got on, and my son turns 2 in a month.
Okay.
And when he plays with other kids right now, he does what's called parallel play, where he'll just kind of go around. Sometimes he'll interact with the other kids, but him and the other child will just kind of work towards the same goal in person. And that's critical. That's a huge part of what we do. That would be part of a reauthorization report, if any of these kids were receiving services. So it's not just about, I think, the vocal communication piece, but also just being in the same space at the same time. And just robots and software can't do that in the same way.
I think that's a good point you make. However, I'm going to have to play a little bit of a devil's advocate here. Nobody quote me because I don't know the exact statistics or anything like that. But I have heard, because I know you were talking about your mom being a nurse and people not wanting a robot to come care for them. I don't know if you guys have heard, but I've heard that there is a hospital in China that is 100% AI run, like no human doctors or nurses. And they apparently have like very low mortality rates, very low cases of medical malpractice, and very strong success rates for their patients. And this is a medical hospital. And so if this is in fact the case, right, we need to look into this further. What do you think you could say again? Because this is human care. This is also human care. Now, it might be specialized surgeries and things like that that are done by robots. But I don't know. Sometimes people are just interested in results. Maybe parents are just interested in results. And if maybe that's an argument that someone could potentially make. Like, hey, I don't care whether it's a human or a robot. I just want results. What do you think about that?
I've heard some of those stories as well about different things that they're doing in China. I'm never sure which ones to believe and which ones not to, but let's, for sake of discussion, let's assume that that's true. I still think that there's a lot of value in a human being being involved. And something that I like to say, and I've been saying it for the past couple of years publicly, is that AI and ABA shouldn't mean artificial intelligence, should mean augmented intelligence. So we're making what the behavior analyst, and when I say behavior analyst, I'm including BCBAs all the way down to RBTs, what they're doing better. So we're making them better at their job. Ultimately, moving forward in the future, I'll say this. I think 20, 30 years from now, every professional human being in the world will have a similar job description, especially knowledge workers. We're all going to be prompt engineers. And a prompt engineer is just somebody that puts instructions into these AI systems. And from a behavior analytic perspective, you can kind of break that down into 2 different skill sets, pinpointing and man training, basically. Now, the reason I'm bringing that up is someone still has to tell these systems what to do. So they're very smart, but we have a phrase in software development that gets tossed around a lot, which is garbage in, garbage out. So if you ask a silly question of these systems, you're going to get a silly answer. So, and the same goes for the type of care that you want. And I think people in general, especially talk to young people. Like I taught at university for years, so did you. We taught at the same university. And if you ask a young person, a 20-year-old, what do you want? They're never going to know, So people tend to be bad at knowing what they want and asking for what they want, which is man training and pinpointing. So I think the human being involved is great at providing their wisdom and experience and helping them request what they want from these systems. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
It does.
especially like human interaction, like what you were saying with the man being like an actual RBT would be like, okay, he's moving towards that way. I know he wants something over there and I'm going to contrive opportunities. Versus robot, be like, oh, okay, he's just turning that way. He's maybe off task. Maybe I was prompted to think that way. So it's a lot of outside thinking the box too that a robot can't do because they're not prompted in that sense if you code them that way. So yeah, I think it's just pretty difficult to go from there. But other than that, I've been using AI with my behavior intervention plans. So it definitely takes a lot of time writing those reports, doing them for authorization. So like it does make a huge difference for burnouts. So what do you say about using AI with documentation?
Yeah, so that's a huge part of what we do. And this is going to be my one shameless plug for the podcast. So at Intraverbal AI, we wanted to develop behavior analysis tools. We wanted to stay away from billing and scheduling and that sort of thing. I went to school, like we all did, for psychology and behavior analysis, not for billing codes. So we focus on, making the documentation easier. And one of the things that we do is we make initial assessments and reassessments easier. And we actually did some research and we got some interesting data. So we surveyed about 350 behavior analysts about 2 years ago. And on average, behavior analysts get approved from the payer, insurance company or Medicaid, 8 to 10 hours to do either an initial assessment or a reassessment. You're already shaking your head, so you know where I'm going with this. Then we ask them, on average, how long does it take for you to actually do a proper assessment? And they said about 18 to 20 hours. So there's a delta of like 10 hours. So we went into the lab and we created a really cool assessment module. And I worked with some great subject matter experts in the field. And we created this assessment module that uses AI. And we got it down to where they were doing initial and reassessments in 3 to 4 hours. And the majority of that time was spent with the client versus sitting in front of your desk.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that saves a lot of time. So that's crazy.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because one of the other things that I talk about is whenever we talk about time, we always tend to monetize that concept. So we'll say saving time, spending time, wasting time.
Yeah.
So we looked at that as one of the most important measures that we wanted to help solve in behavior analysis is the amount of time that people are spending doing wasteful activities.
Yes.
I love that so much. That is a topic that has always been such a huge pain point in our field is we never get paid enough to do our assessments. It always takes 2 or 3 times as long as what the insurance carriers want to reimburse us for. I think that's a huge contribution to our field. And I think a lot of people are going to be interested. But I want you to tell us more about Intraverbal AI. Like what is the company about? What are the values? What is the mission? And what products do you guys offer? I think everybody would be super interested to know that.
Yeah, thank you for asking. So the mission of the company is to improve the science and practice of behavior analysis. And we just happen to use technology to achieve those goals. And again, like I said a few minutes ago, is we sat down and said, what are the problems that we want to solve? So I think any good product, service, or company is fundamentally a problem-solving entity. So if you're not bringing a new product or service to the market that doesn't exist, or bringing a product or service to the market that does better than what's out there, you're not going to survive. So we sat down and said, what are the problems in behavior analysis? And the very first 2 problems we wanted to solve were evidence-based practice and HIPAA compliance issues. So what are some of the AI systems that you all currently use? ChatGPT, Claude, Grok, Gemini?
ChatGPT and Claude.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So Claude's super popular now. I feel like it's the most popular kid on the block.
I like switching around. I'm faithful. I've been using ChatGPT for a while, and I'm like, oh, I'm happy with this one. I haven't even tried the others, to be honest.
It's pretty easy to use. I feel like Claude goes more in depth and it's more clinical research. Like it has a lot more research into it versus leaving it vague, like ChatGPT.
Okay.
So,
and I'm glad you brought up the research piece. So there's some interesting research, and I can send it over to you, that a capital investment firm did last year. And they're like, where does ChatGPT and other systems like that get their information from? And for the most part, they scrape the internet and then train their system on the information that they're gathering from the internet. And some of the places that they were showing, some of the sites that they get the information from, a plurality of the information from that research came from Reddit. And if you've ever been to like a behavior analysis Reddit group, it's rough.
That's no good.
So we wanted to solve evidence-based practice. So I've been in the field as long as you have, for 20 years, 22 years now. Long time, right?
Yeah, long time.
And we would, I would go to clients' houses, and you want to do evidence-based practice, but you can't lug a whole bunch of notebooks with journal articles in there, and you can't pop it out when the client is having a tantrum or something like that, or you're running skills with them. So we wanted to solve this problem of AI using the internet and not having access to the journal articles or to the literature.
Okay.
So we set up licensure agreements with a variety of different academic publishers that house our journal articles and books. So our system, when you ask our chat tool questions, instead of searching scraped internet, Reddit, you have to see some of the other sites like Walmart and TripAdvisor, and I'll send you all the research. It's hysterical. But instead of searching those, our system searches through the ABA literature to give you a behavior analysis answer. So that was one big thing that we wanted to solve. The next one is the rule that everyone's giving right now for their practitioners at a company is you can use ChatGPT and Claude, but you can't enter client information in there because you have to protect PHI, right?
Yeah.
So we developed a special AI model on the back end of our system that when you ask a question of the system, it redacts and de-identifies all of the PHI out of it. It creates like what we call a virtual container, and it strips out all of the PHI, and then it processes it through AI and then re-identifies the PHI. All of this happens in the span of like 3 seconds.
Yeah.
So it does it super quick. You ask a question, it removes the information, processes it, puts it back in, and then gives you the answer like it never left. So it's a really good experience, and practitioners can upload client documentation in there. They can put their clients' names in there and say, hey, do you remember working with Miriam or Corellix? And the system will remember their names and remember details about them without jeopardizing that PHI.
Oh, because that was one question I actually wanted to ask, was the ethical concerns, but you pretty much answered it. So that's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. And another, so we've taken a lot of measures to make sure that we're doing this right. And one of the other things that we do is we don't train our system on user data.
Okay.
So we get a sense for what people are asking and understand that, but we don't actually train AI models with client data, which was a big request of a lot of people as well, because all of those other really big systems take that data and use it to make their systems smarter. And, that's something that people should consent to before you do it.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. PHI and HIPAA compliance in general is something that can be very dangerous, very costly for business owners, and obviously, for the families whose private health information might be put at risk. So I really love that you guys are leading ethically. I think it sounds very revolutionary, honestly. I think it can definitely take our field by storm. I can see how there's a huge need, especially for newly board certified BCBAs who sometimes lack that confidence. And, the board actually recently changed the guidelines that if you're newly certified, you have to practice under the direction of another BCBA who has at least 5 years of experience, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think for newly certified clinicians who sometimes go straight from being RBT to BCBA without anything in between. I know you mentioned earlier, sometimes there's a BCABA in between, but sometimes there isn't just because the funding source just doesn't allow for it. That structure isn't there fiscally. And so I think that would be amazing. And especially even for someone like me, for example, if I decide to take on a case clinically, because I've been a company owner for quite some time now, but, I maybe have been disconnected from the research for a little bit because I've been busy in the world of entrepreneurship. And don't necessarily, and I'm a mom now, right? And I don't necessarily have the time to sit and read journal articles for hours and hours and hours and hours and highlight and make notes for myself. And so using augmented intelligence, I love that term. I love it because it's just like how we use augmentative communication devices for our kiddos. It's like augmentative intelligence for behavior analysts. I really love that, Adam. And I want to thank you for, for bringing something so valuable to a field that I think is very much needed, right, Miriam?
Especially a BCBA is actually prompting AI versus someone else. Because if it's someone else, the information is not just going to go out there correctly. And then especially the ethical concerns that we kind of discussed. I think it's pretty awesome too, because I feel like I spent a lot of time modeling and training these RBTs, but then I don't have time for my supervision stuff. So then I have to save that work for home. So it just overwhelms me. But now that we have the AI and the resources that we have, we can utilize that and have more training and effective supervision versus I'm going to just look at the data today. I cannot help you maybe for 30 minutes and then that RBT doesn't feel supported. And so there's not that much interaction with the client either to make any more modifications because you have so much little time. So.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yes. So valuable. So many BCBAs have so much work to take home, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's all about, it's like the billable hours have to be at a certain limit for the salaries, but then also I'm not done with just my billable hours. There's so much more to be done. And so I think a tool like this might be really beneficial all around. Can you talk to me about company owners though? Is there anything that that you guys do? So for example, I find myself using a lot of AI for HR matters.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Is there any specific to behavior analysis, right? Which I think might be different from other fields in certain ways. Is that something you guys currently handle, or do you foresee potentially having something like that down the line?
So some of the HR things so I know that there's a great AI system out there called Scribe AI.
Okay.
It's phenomenal. It's specifically designed for HR and it's, I don't know much about it. I know a lot of companies that I'm associated with use it and they love it. Okay. And it's designed to help create, I believe, policies and protocols, and it follows or records what people are doing and then creates a job description out of it and task analyses on how to do the job. So it's a pretty great tool. There's some other tools out there that do that. Our system focuses a little bit more on the behavior analysis and the clinical piece. So you mentioned supervision earlier. We have a tool that that helps out with supervision, for example. So we will do when you do a supervision meeting with with an RBT or a candidate, BCBA candidate, our system records and transcribes the entire meeting between both parties, and it analyzes it and gives you feedback as a supervisor from a behavior analysis perspective. It tells you things like praise to correction ratio, talk time ratio, active listening targets. And then it gives you a session summary that you can use for your session note. It gives you a whole bunch of different things, a full transcript. And the idea was to make supervision less about paperwork and more about supporting the RBT. So now we've got the ability as well where the system can track supervision hours. And we all know that there's a lot of rules and they change the rules what feels like every single year. And you have to keep track of when does it change? When does it go into effect? So our system keeps track of all of that to make the process for both parties, the supervisee and the supervisor, a lot easier.
I love that so much. Especially for new BCBAs, because they don't know if they're doing something correctly. So they can look back and get that feedback. And I feel like that's a huge game changer, because when they're like first entries, they can just see how they're providing supervision and then look into the transcript and be like, oh, I could have provided more praise, kind of like what you suggested, or I could have modeled the actual program instead of verbally providing feedback, because some of our RBTs are visual learners. So it's so like effective for supervision. That's great.
I mean, I know I interview a lot of RBTs for Lotus, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're currently in the process of interviewing a lot of RBTs. And I hear a lot that RBTs, there's a lot of turnover in the field of ABA. Everybody knows this. And I hear a lot how RBTs and who are currently at other companies don't feel supported.
100%.
They don't get enough supervision. And when they do get supervision, it is low quality, whatever that means to them. But objectively speaking, it usually means low one-on-one, high quality communication with their supervisor, instead of just sitting on the corner, typing away at their laptop, analyzing the data, or making protocol modifications on their own, and just like, here, bye, see you next month, or whatever's happening. And so I think a lot of behavior analysts, like when we go to school, a very small percentage of what we're actually taught in our textbooks and or any journal articles we might read is about how to be a good supervisor, right? We're taught how to be good behavior analysts and how to make behavioral changes in our clients, but not necessarily how to be good supervisors. So I think that's a huge contribution to our field. So I commend you again. I love that. Because ultimately we need to build a field with practitioners that are competent and kind and ethical, and a lot of good things, so that our clients can benefit in the end.
Yeah. And a lot of parents, they kind of are skeptical about ABA because of what's going on with the fraud in, Medicaid, things like that. Especially in Miami, there's a lot of RBTs that come to me and say, I just see an RBT and they're not really doing anything with the client. And the supervisor, they're just standing there and just typing away. And then when I went to the school district, the teacher was like, are you just going to be standing there collecting your data, or are you going to actually work with the client? Because we need someone to work with our client. And so I was like, no, I don't know where you had the experience or whatever, but we're hands-on. We like to provide feedback, and we like to work together and collaborate. So I think this idea of, being more interactive and providing quality services is going to change the eyes of, the community because right now AB is not looking so good, and we need to actually change that in social media platforms. So
that's actually very, very heartbreaking to me, because it is the reality, especially here in Miami, because we are the fraud hub of everything happening with Medicaid and with Sunshine and with all the things. I got a phone call last week that ABA companies all over Hialeah are closing down, that clients are losing services, RBTs have no jobs, and it's just a huge mess. And so I think we really need to reel it back in and set a very solid foundation of what behavior analysis can be today and who we are going to be as a field 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And I think using augmentative intelligence is definitely the right way to go.
Yeah, I completely agree. You asked me earlier about our mission, and I think I was sitting here thinking about it that from an augmented intelligence perspective, we're really a company that we're an AI company that helps practitioners engage in more human behavior. So we're actually trying to use technology to help people engage in more human activities and less administrative rote tasks. And I think when you do that, I think better services are going to come from that and really help out with some of the issues that unfortunately we see that are so prevalent, especially here in Miami.
I love that.
Yes.
You can't replace like human eye contact. You can't replace a hug. You can't replace a high five, or you can't replace sharing an experience with another human. And so thank you so much, Adam, for being our very first guest. You were a pleasure to have on board with us today.
Yes.
I feel like we definitely shared a lot of valuable experiences and information with our audience today. I hope you all enjoyed it. Please remember to follow us on social media. We're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, and we're on TikTok as well.
Yes. And then, Adam, how can we find you, or if the audience wants to?
So the only social media platform that I interact with is LinkedIn.
Okay.
For my own mental health. I just stay on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is
Smart.
productive. So you can just do Adam Ventura on LinkedIn. You can find me there.
Okay, perfect. Sounds good. Thank you, guys.
Awesome.